It is the Anfield Wrap. It is a season review show. I've actually been struck by the usefulness of Liverpool taking a week to breathe in and out before Arne Slot actually turns up. It means you can get some stuff done looking backwards and begin to do a little bit of looking forwards. It's very, very kind of them. I have in front of me to do their reviews and talk through the season on their own terms. John Milburn, Stu Wright, Siobhan, Biggane and Steve Graves. We haven't decided an order. I'm just going to trust them. I'm going to look around the table and see who looks eager at the key moment. We are, though, here with Green King. They've been with us all the way through the season, and it's been a pleasure. There is a lot of football to come in the near future. There is still a Champions League final to sort itself out as far as the club game's concerned, and a Conference League final as well. And then it is all international football all the way. You can watch all of that in 900 sports clubs dotted around the UK. You're always within walking distance of your local Green King, and the Euros will most definitely be better than with friends as you go all the way through, and to relax into what should hopefully be a fantastic constructive summer. Huge title showdowns, and we've got Europe, all the other bits and pieces as well in there. Do download the app and enjoy that whenever there is a game on. We will talk then about the season and the way in which it played out. Stu Wright has got his book in front of him, he's got his notes. The way this works is you can talk about whatever you want for pretty much as long as you want. In an ideal world it wouldn't be longer than 10-15 minutes, and then we'll have a little chat about it. First up then, Stu.
Okay, when trying to pull this together, I was really struggling what to make of this season, and I couldn't really put my finger on why. But once I started having a look at all the different threads, I just realised there's far too many narratives. There was far too many things going on. I can't really remember a season like it. And I could talk about the things that have been spoken about before, the issues, the concerns around whether it be Gakpo, Nunes, not having a number 6, some defensive issues. I could talk about those things, but I don't want to because I'm really tired of talking about them. I'm exhausted of it. So I started to think, well, there's so many narratives there. I think I'm going to try and superimpose my own narrative over the top, and I came to the conclusion that Liverpool never had the chance in the first place because it was this was predetermined by fate. Anyone ever seen, you remember the film Final Destination? Yeah, so
five of them, aren't there?
Yeah, I think so. I only ever saw the first.
Definitely seen 3.
Wow, fair play, commitment. Yeah. But for those who haven't seen it, the general premise of the plot is that there's an American high school class who are going to Europe on a school field trip, and they're about to go on a plane, and one of them, the protagonist, has this vision somehow. I can't remember how. He has this premonition that the plane's going to blow up. So he causes panic by saying it's going to blow up, we can't go on. And then so a bunch of them end up not getting on the plane, him and a few of his mates and enemies as it turns out, but a few of them don't get on the plane. And the rest of the film is basically death finding increasingly complicated ways to ensure that he hunts down every single one of them in this ludicrous web of bizarre deaths, right? And so for this narrative that I'm superimposing over Liverpool season, fate is substituting for death, okay? And fate will hunt down Liverpool as the season moves on. And it starts off, I'm going to talk about the injuries, and not just your bog standard injuries, the ones that Erik ten Hag is talking about with Man United. Yeah, they've had a few serious ones, but they've also had some no marks injured as well. I wanted to talk about the injury list that Liverpool have had this season, because we all remember the season after winning the league, we lost some key players, and it absolutely devastated the season. When I go back through Liverpool's season, if I just go through the list, Matip. Now, I think Matip is probably Liverpool's second most important centre-half over the past 5, 6, 7 years. I think the best partnership at Liverpool, the most defensively robust partnership, has been when Matip has been able to play. He gets an ACL. I mean, we all know he's injury prone, but he gets an ACL at the start of the season. Okay, so he's gone. Sound. All right. You're going to do that to his face. Okay, well, we'll get through that. We've got other options. We've got Kanate there. We love him. No. Fate decides that he's going to turn into Titus Bramble for the best part of the season. So it's fine. No, we'll dig someone out of the youth team, and we bring in a lad I'd never heard of a year ago in Quansah, and he does great. But then you go through the rest of our defence, and then your left back, your captain of Scotland. In October, he dislocates his shoulder whilst playing for Scotland. All right, so we'll get through that. We've got another couple of lads who can play left back there. Oh no, like the next game, your substitute left back, he's going to break his collarbone because the smallest player on the pitch against Arsenal is going to clean him out. That really going to break his collarbone, yeah, because your 6'4" German manager is going to land on top of him as well, and that'll just finish him off. Right, okay, so that's a bit bizarre. Right, we'll push past that. So you've got Matip injured, you got Robertson injured, you got Robertson substitute injured in Costas. I've only got Trent there left and Virgil. Oh no, Trent's going to get injured. He's going to get a bizarre hyperextension of his knee, and he's going to be injured for a while as well. And he's absolutely key to your game plan this season, where you're trying to do something a little bit different that had worked on the back of the last 5-6 months of the last season. He's going to be a playmaker coming into midfield. Well, that's gone now. That's gone. So, okay, no, we'll overcome that. We'll bring another lad from the youth team. Yeah, some youth team we've got there. We'll bring another lad in there. We'll overcome that. Great. But that just leaves Virgil and the goalie, Alisson. Oh no, the goalie's going as well. Like, he'll be out for months. Your goalie's going to get a hamstring injury. What? Your goalie's going to get a hamstring injury. How many goalies get hamstring injuries? What are you talking about? Your goalie's going to get a hamstring injury. All right, no, we'll bring another lad through from the reserves from the youth team that we brought through. And you know what? He's going to play in the cup final. You're going to have a cup final full of kids. You're going to be playing a team that have spent £1 bazillion. And you're going to beat them with arguably your one remaining senior player. He's going to score the winner in the last minute of injury time. Great, that's brilliant. We've got a trophy on the mantelpiece there. So fate's doing its level best, but we keep on going. It's not bringing us down. It's not holding us back. We're managing to find our way to the top of the table, and largely it's because there's two players up front who, amidst all the madness around them, in that first half, maybe first 2/3 of the season, they're keeping us going. When they're on the pitch, they're keeping us going. So Jota and Salah, we're relying on them to score us goals. But Salah's going to go to AFCON, and then he's going to get a hamstring injury. He's going to be out of the equation as well. Oh, and when Jota's doing really well in his absence, we're going to wipe him out with a knee injury, and he's going to be out for months. And that best midfielder you've got at the club, Thiago, you won't see him. No, you will see him. We'll tantalise you a little bit with him. We'll give you a little bit of a look at him. You'll get about 20 minutes against Arsenal, but that's it. He's going to be out for the season, but with a hip and a muscle injury that no one ever got to the bottom of what that was. Okay, so we've got to get through all of that. So let's move on from the injuries. You've got a team who've got 115 charges against them. Okay, we all know that. But the new information this year is, on the sly, they found a way to take a load of the referees over to their country in the UAE and pay them 20 grand a pop to referee some games when they typically get paid at 1,500 quid for Premier League games. They're going to get paid 20 grand a pop. They're going to be flown over first class and put up in the best hotels. When they come back, one of those lads, he's going to be on VAR against Tottenham Hotspur, and he's going to overrule a goal that everyone has seen in real time and in slow motion. He's going to decide that that's not a goal. Okay. And that's going to cost you points. Which could be vital at the end of the season, right? Okay, you're going to put on a monumental performance, but that's going to cost you points. The player who does score in that game, he was doing his level best at that part of the season as well. Diaz, he's had some critics about being able to finish, and I think that being valid at times. But this season, I think his end, particularly in the first half of the season, his end product was better. Just going back to the ref situation. Another one of those refs who got paid 20 grand to go over there, he is going to be the referee at Anfield when you play Manchester City. And at the end of the game, when one of their lads kung fu kicks McAllister in their penalty box, when it's a nailed-on penalty to win us the game, he's going to say no. He's going to say that's not a penalty as well. And everyone's going to be sound with that, and there's going to be no sniffing around the fact that they've had some soft money from the UAE. So we've got that to contend with as well. All right, yeah. And Diaz, the lad who up front was probably the most consistent player in that first part of the season, apart from Salah, and he's really weighing in. his dad's going to get kidnapped. His dad is going to get kidnapped in the jungle. In the jungle. That's the maddest thing I've ever heard. That's the maddest thing I've ever heard. His dad is going to get kidnapped in the jungle. And Liverpool at this point are still finding a way to be top of the league, by the way. Still finding a way to be top of the league. Thankfully, his dad comes back. But he's got a bit on his mind. You know what I mean? He's had a rough few days there. And then, on top of all of that, Liverpool have at this point managed to put all those setbacks behind them, find a way to win the first trophy of the season, still be in every competition, and be top of the league. Fate, you haven't done enough there. You haven't done enough to see us. Oh no, the manager, he's going to jib it. What? Oh, shut up. The manager's going to jib it. The manager is going to jib it at one of the most important times of the season. Now, it all makes sense, the fact that he's got to tell everyone because it's going to leak out, and Liverpool have got to find a new manager. They've got to go about their business. There's nothing we can do but that's what's going to happen as well. And I think, ultimately, when you tot up all of those events, it is a miracle that Liverpool were able to outthink, outmaneuver, outlast fate's predetermined destiny for us for as long as they did. It's a miracle. It's testament to huge reserves of character. It's testament to great coaching. It's testament to great players, a great youth team. But ultimately, in this scenario, fate is the house, and the house always wins. But we gave the house a hell of a run for its money. And I think that gives me cause for optimism as we go into a new season. As we finish this one, we go into a new season. I'm exhausted by that incredible web of narratives that Liverpool have had to contend with this season. I'm exhausted by the web of narratives Liverpool have had to contend with for the past 3 or 4 seasons, to be quite honest with you. It took me a long time to get over 2022. But the manager looks absolutely knackered. He says he's knackered. When you see all of that, you can understand why he's knackered. So maybe now is the right time for a change. Maybe now is the right time for a bit of a clean slate. And we go again.
Just my first thing on it is, I think it's dead interesting, the idea of where the injuries come and when. So I think Brentford away, they play ever so well. It's a really good victory. It's in loads of ways one of the best performances of the season. I was worried going into that game because there's loads of things Brentford do. I thought we never won there before. They win 4-1, but it feels like in your sort of negotiation with fate territory, Jota goes off injured, Jones goes off injured, both of them are first half. Salah comes on for Jota, and Salah picks up an injury at the back end of that game. And it just sort of seems a little bit like when you want to go through it all, that's almost your ultimate final destination game, which is we'll let you win 4-1. It's a ground you've never won at under this manager. There's us given, but this is the cost. This is what we're taking away. And it's just really funny that, the more I keep looking back at this season and doing these shows and listening to everyone, I keep sort of looking at that Brentford game, and the other part of it is, Christ, we played really well. We beat Brentford. We scored 4 at Brentford and 4 at Bournemouth.
Would it be nice to just win 2-1 though, and maybe not have
and
one
keep
of
the players?
Yeah, one of them.
There's Gravenberch at Wembley. You get even your great moments. You're then losing one of your players, who you go, we're going to have to rely on him now. Okay. And then he's out of the picture. And yeah, it did seem to be every time we defied some element of fate, then something else came along, or something else. I mean, the Diaz thing at Spurs, it is him. I mean, it's a great finish, unbelievable finish, isn't it? And then that gets chucked off, and yeah, every time you put it. I mean,
Gakpo gets injured, scoring the equaliser.
But the nature of the nature of their winning goal is just so hard to take as well, isn't it? We'll try and do that again with Joel Matip, the player who is just about to be out of the picture anyway, by another quirk of fate, a negative one. That's one of his last acts, really, which is A, not at all fitting for his Liverpool career, and B, just a ridiculous. And how many times could you recreate that? Liverpool have got 9, and they do so well with 9, and you come away with a bit of a spring in your step, but just that, it's ridiculous.
Just one other thing for you to think about, though. Does he overplay some of them at times? Could he rest a couple more? Could he put some stuff in the bin at some point, or do you think he's pretty much doing what's available, making his chopping and changing in League Cups, in Europa Leagues, in the FA Cup?
I'd be interested to hear in which games you'd think that was. I'm sure there is probably some evidence of it, but I think you could probably...
He goes oddly strong in the 5-1 against West Ham, but I think he's trying to get something into them. If he's trying to use it as a training game, if you know what I mean. I think there's a couple where I'm trying to work out whether or not the training games in the Europa League and stuff like that, where he's trying to look at something and get something in them versus something else. But for instance, they do go strong against West Ham in the 5-1.
Was it West Ham again when somebody said to him in a press conference, he said, like, you've got this embarrassment of riches, and then like a week later everyone's leg fell off.
There was a game where he says that, where he says, don't say that to me ever again. I think that's as we move into January. You've got so many to choose from, and he says, don't say that to me ever again.
Well, he said himself he'd like to have played. He thinks he should have played Elliott more in the season, and you know that's sort of an easy thing to say in hindsight when you see a player in great form at the end of the season. But there's probably times when he could have played. You probably could have seen a bit more Gravenberch at a few key times, but the manager might say different, might tell you different, might certainly in the moment and in that week and in training might have told you different.
I think though, if you look at like the lion's share of the injuries, they're a bit freakish.
Yeah.
They're not really associated with being overplayed. So, you know, an ACL injury, I mean, what are you going to do about that? Your goalkeeper getting a hamstring injury in training, what are you going to do about that? Hyperextension of the knee, that's just the way he's connected with the ball. Your manager landed on your head.
Robertson's at Scotland. I think we're reaching a little bit, really, and I think we're looking for reasons where there's no rationale, there's no logic to what's gone on, and I just think that when you're in the cold light of day, because it's so easy when you're on the roller coaster, you can't see the wood for you can't actually really think about the turn that you've just had, the flip that you've just had, because there's one coming down the road. But it's only when you at the end of it start to then put the pieces together forensically. Jesus Christ, that is an unbelievable set of circumstances. And listen, I'm not saying that it should all be about excuses. The reason why I'm really talking about it is because I think when I was struggling to make sense of the season, I needed to find out why. Well, that made no sense. And when I was trying to evaluate whether the positives and the negatives and what the implications were going forward, I think there's an awful lot of that is almost taken out of our hands, almost taken out of the club's hands, really, the way fate conspired against us. But also the very fact, and this is where I came to, the very fact that we were able to punch up for as long as we did and take it as far as we could makes me think there's cause for optimism there. Next up, John Milburn.
Okay. I've deliberately not listened to anybody else's yet because...
Including Stu.
Well, apart from Stu. Because
we're not like two-footed.
It was such a performance.
I'm notoriously kind of easily swayed on most things. I did write down, you said the phrase ludicrous web, which I thought would be a great name for the show. If you're going to take it to Edinburgh or something, great double meaning in there for fans of the PGMOL. So I've done some preparation for this, which is, as Neil will know, very, very not in my character. And I was the whole premise of doing a season review is to kind of establish how you think it went and kind of are you happy with it, and kind of happiness is quite a broad term, and so long-term happiness is based on the gap between your expectations and the reality. And sort of coming into this season, I probably have to go back a further 12 months and kind of coming away from the 2022 season and the experience. It's 2 years almost to the day we were in Paris, wasn't it? And I came away from that thinking I was sound, but actually I found it really, really hard to get into football last season. I definitely lost some of the joy, and if you think about some of the miracles that happened in that season, I still wasn't really enjoying it in the way that I probably deserved to. It felt to me at the end of last season that we kind of come to the end of a cycle. And in the 12 months, the two windows prior to last season, at the end of last season, we'd lost Sadio, Bobby, Milner, Oxlade-Chamberlain, Naby Keita, and then last summer Henderson and Fabinho went, and it felt like one of the greatest squads of my adult life was being kind of dismantled. And so if you go back to maybe last August as well, from an ins point of view, I think we look back at last summer's transfers, they look all right, but last August I was having a bit of a meltdown actually. It looked fucking really chaotic. And the stuff that happened with Chelsea, with Lavia and Caicedo, it was like we've got players' agents taking the piss out of Liverpool to get moves to Chelsea. And when we signed Endo, in retrospect, I absolutely love Endo, but in the window, I just thought, is this some kind of cruel practical joke? But like, as I say, I didn't know who he was and didn't know how great he would be. So my expectations, if I put myself back in that mindset, was that this would be very much a transitional season. Kind of the bottom end of my expectations was that we would get back into the Champions League. We were coming off a platform of about 67 points. And I kind of harboured this view that maybe if City came off it a little bit, they just won 3 back-to-back titles, they just won the treble, kind of you hope that at some point they're going to drop off a little bit. And maybe if City dropped off a cliff, could it be like the Leicester season where somebody maybe not undeserving, but somebody kind of who maybe less fancy could win the league? Looking back at the previous season, Arsenal had finished second and, as we all know, kind of fell away at the crucial points. Chelsea were outspending us. Newcastle had finished fourth. Spurs are mad and kind of could do anything. United had finished third and had won a cup and lost in a final. They had 75 points. So there was a lot of reasons. So we weren't fancied in the way that kind of we ended up being kind of odds-on favourite at one point during this season. But I kind of thought if we could keep our core team fit, and no spoilers because Stu just told you we didn't keep all of our core team fit, and not have anything mad happen. And again, as Stu mentioned, lots of mad things happen during the league. You never know. And I think the other bit of context, and again, I appreciate I'm giving a massive preamble. There's more preamble than there is content, to be brutally honest with you. Since we won the league in 1990, my reckoning is we had serious title challenges roughly every 5 or 6 years. Roughly, very, very roughly, until Klopp. And then when Klopp comes around, we probably average one every other year. And the thing that was making me think anything's possible is because we've got Klopp as the manager, and actually, no matter how far away it might seem under Klopp, you're never as far away as you might be. But like, it's fair to say, coming into this season, my expectations were probably in a very, very realistic place, I think. And it's not my intention to go through chapter and verse through all the games in the season, but I thought it was a dreadful time to get Chelsea away. And I've still don't know whether it was a good point or not. Everyone saying, well, you'll know at the end of the season whether it was a good point or not, and I've still got absolutely no idea. Newcastle away was probably the most alive I've felt about a football match in ages. It was just absolutely the best, dancing on tables in the Red Lion, and it was just absolutely berserk. And I have to say that still remains a highlight. The whole Tottenham thing was crackers. Don't need to replay it. If we had not won the league by those margins, I would have been really, really happy for Liverpool to mount a legal challenge and go get something, because I still think it's unprecedented how badly that was handled, and that was grim. I've written just 2 words: Luton hurt, like the shortest word in my Bible, shortest sentence in my Bible. But and I always think about these breaks. After 18 games, we had the autumn break. We'd won against Brentford, although we'd suffered a few injuries. City drew 4-4 with Chelsea and left us 1 point off the top going into that international break. And at that point, City had lost 3 games. Tottenham had lost 4. United and Chelsea had lost the same number of games as Everton. They'd lost 8 games each at that point. So we were in America, and we were understandably feeling quite good about ourselves, but it was still early. It was 18 games had gone. But Liverpool rise to the summit, and you're sitting, I wouldn't say comfortably, but looking forward to a potential push on multiple fronts. And the most human thing in the world is to recalibrate your expectations. The chances of a quadruple are infinitesimally tiny. Certainly for a transitional team, they'd be even lower again. But we are a football club who's driven by our emotions. We achieve mad things, and we all start to think about the possibilities. We do so without ever thinking that we're the best team in this league. I don't think any of us thought we were the best team in the league, but we thought mad stuff happens. I don't know if this is like wet, 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 but it's a better joke with wet, wet, wet. We spend 12 weeks at number one, which I think is that we spent longer at number one than certainly City. I don't know whether we spent more time at number one than Arsenal.
We did.
Yeah. Doesn't count for anything, by the way. But I thought it was interesting. We had adrenaline and drama and incredible moments. But I think often the drama came from getting par results, but in dramatic circumstances. So, like, Forest away.
I very much agree with this.
Forest away was a good example of that. Like, we really, really made it difficult. And again, Darwin gave me another incredible moment supporting Liverpool. But it was actually just to beat Nottingham Forest. They weren't that good. And there was far too many of those. We made hard yards out of beating Sheffield United at home is another example. So with a couple of exceptions, Palace was a bit of a shock result. Everton wasn't quite a shock result. I think a draw wouldn't have surprised anyone. Getting beat was a bit of a surprise. Broadly, we got results for the rest of the season that you'd probably expect us to get. And where we failed was normally at places where you would probably think that we're at risk. So Old Trafford is never a given. Playing against Arsenal, never a given. And so we had a couple of embarrassing, I think, but not inconceivable performances against our biggest domestic rivals. What we did at Goodison was embarrassing. What we did in Old Trafford twice was embarrassing from my perspective. And they undid a season that was about par in every other way, really. And so some conclusions. I had a lovely time, which I think is really, really important. I picked and chose my games more this season than I would have done in previous seasons. I tried to get out of the habit of going. I never didn't feel like going. I was able to help other people out with my ticket. A cup and comfortable third place is way ahead of my expectations my original expectations for the season. I would really have loved to take the league into the deep end and see if a genuine three-way punch out in the last month might have seen a different outcome. Would one of the other two blinked if there was a third party also going toe for toe with them? The fact that we didn't take it further is a frustration, but again, perhaps not completely unexpected. What next? I think there's a bit of conventional wisdom that we need to convert more chances as the goals began to dry up towards the end of the campaign. And I think when you look at our attacking stats and the chances created, converted, it's potentially fair. But I think we probably still, when you look at the number of goals in the campaign, there was enough goals in the campaign to have achieved our expectation. We just need to really, 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 really stop giving a goal head start to inferior football teams, particularly at home. When I tried to look at the why that might be, we've had no dopes in our team in defence at all. Every one of them I would sign up and sign again. But we've been forced to rotate way more in the back four than you would need to do to go for the title. If you look at kind of teams that win titles, they normally do it with a rock solid defence. So I think solving that particular conundrum will, whether it's a personnel issue, which I doubt, a tactical or organisational or mindset or performance thing, has to be Arne Slot's number one priority for me. The other observation, as I come to the end of the season and what comes next, is we've had a lot of backroom outs, and I presume we'll have a load of new backroom ins and a big turnover of institutional memory. And so for me, it's like the opposite of the boot room methodology, where you've got all this continuity and consistency, which makes me a bit nervous about the next season. The director of football structure should aid continuity, but I feel now it feels like a much bigger transition than just a manager or a head coach leaving, let alone the most talismanic leader we've had since Shankly. Not quite year zero for the leadership group, but not a million miles away. But no backward steps. Anything is possible, and I just really hope we can build on what we've got and no backsliding at all.
Okay, my one thing on your rotation of the back four is that loads of it is obviously enforced on him.
Absolutely.
Around Matip and stuff like that. Do you not find the Konate thing to have just been a bit mad over the course of the season? There's like, in the end, he plays 1,791 league minutes over the course of the campaign. To sort of contextualise that, Virgil's on 3,581, which is just pretty much almost twice as many nailed on there. Like, if I'm sort of wondering about the manager through here, it felt like he was continually wrapping Konate up in cotton wool, but then I was almost at times left going, but for what? Like, what's the game you're wrapping him up in cotton wool for, if you sort of know what I mean?
I wasn't sure it was rotation just to save his legs a minute, to be honest. I thought he had a big performance drop-off, to be honest with you, and I thought when Quansah came in, Quansah was at least as good of him, if not better, and he was better on the ball. And towards the end of the season, I preferred Quansah in the team to Konate.
What was that one where it was the game before United away in the league, and everyone was saying don't play Konate, save him for Old Trafford, and lo and behold he gets injured in that game. I can't remember which one it was, but it was a classic. Like,
Sheffield United, he plays against Sheffield United. I don't think he plays at Old Trafford.
He doesn't, because he's injured from the previous game, and it was so unbelievably predictable in that sense. But also, obviously what happens with Quansah in that game is again, it's a bit of a freak, isn't it? But you weren't that gutted, because you're kind of like, well, there's not that much of a drop off here. There should be. There should be a huge drop off. But it was kind of like much of a muchness. But it just, of course, he gets injured in the game that you think he shouldn't be playing in.
Like, Quansah started against Man City at home, and the idea that none of us went, oh, that's a risk. Everyone was absolutely fine with this new emerging kid playing, starting against Man City. So,
but my point is that you've said that there's just too much rotation.
No,
if you see what I mean, that's what I'm sort of driving at here.
I'm not saying by choice. I'm saying that teams that win the league often have got a stable back four, and they're able to go again and again and again and again, and maybe rotate more in the cups. We've just had terrible luck with our back four with injuries this season.
Yeah, and Man City get to have Guardiola not really fancy him and still be really strong. And I think ultimately by the end of the season he doesn't really fancy Konate playing centre half for him. He's a little bit done with it, at least in this season.
He's had enough after Everton, hasn't he?
I think he's had enough, and I think that is something that that's the luxury of what everything that Man City have got buys you. Is that luxury to do that with a player where you can just basically not really fancy them, drop them in now and again. They'll get the odd game, but ultimately everyone knows the writing's on the wall. They're gonna, and Liverpool's strength is they've never really not been able to do that, and the manager's had to work with resources he's got because he's been brilliant at it. But yeah, the downside is when someone drops out. I mean, we talked about all of the bad luck. I mean, the strokes of not exactly fortune, but providence, I suppose, in people like Quansah and Bradley and Kelleher performing as well as they did is remarkable. And notwithstanding, and again, none of those players, but if Alisson plays more games, I think Liverpool get more points. But the actual, the extent to which they compensate is remarkable, and also the extent to which when the other players come back, I think the manager finds it harder. He finds it harder to not be pinning all his hopes on Bobby Clark and James McConnell. I mean, I think Neil's sick of me saying this, but when you look at the highlights of the Sparta Prague game at home, and they made life very easy for us. Let's be fair, but there's a lot of Bobby Clark in that game. And I feel like there's not a lot of Bobby Clark in our performances that kind of come after that when it feels like Liverpool are a little bit lethargic and a little bit there's not much snap. And if you look at his goal particularly, there's all of the snap and all of the thing that say Lallana at his very best brought, which was a real awareness. And it would have been nice maybe to see a little bit more of that.
Do you think if Klopp's not leaving, that doesn't happen? Because I do, because I think he's kind of got his mini league with it. His best 15 who it's like it's almost a bit of a travesty publicly if he doesn't play. I think if he's got more time,
I think the midfield he picks at Goodison feels to me like it's a midfield to just pick his best midfielders rather than, we can talk about the centre backs getting bullied by Calvert-Lewin, but really it should be the number 6 who's able to do that, and we didn't set ourselves up to have that, to have someone who could lose those battles, frankly, in front of your centre halves, whereas you end up having your centre halves losing them, and I think there was just a couple of times, and it's always been in the manager's character to go with the players he knows when push comes to shove, and most of the time that served us really well.
The other point I was just going to make at the end, and I never made it, was that I think in our elite playing group, I think there'll be some players who are on the fence about what to do next with the career, and I think they'll give Slot the benefit of the doubt. In the main, I think they'll give him the benefit of the doubt, but I do think they need to be able to see, if not necessarily success, a pathway to success next season, and to be able to see where this is going pretty quickly. Otherwise, they're then making plans to do whatever they're going to do next year.
And there, our institutional memory, that you're talking about, losing a lot of that, but there, Alisson, Van Dijk in particular, are the ones, and Trent coming through, and so that is where that stays, and it's on the pitch. And there's an argument the institutional memory elsewhere is of not quite winning the biggest things for quite a while now, and what you've got to do is still do what they have been doing, which is getting us in positions to win them, which is absolutely no mean feat. So yeah, a lot to be done.
John, just on your point of picking and choosing games, I too decided to pick and choose my games this season, and can I tell you the ones I missed?
Go on.
Fulham at home, Luton at home, Newcastle at home. Several other crap ones, but the 3 best ones, basically.
Luton home was the best night of our lives.
Yeah, I watched it from
Where
the
did
couch.
that come from?
I know. So I was starting to think that maybe I was the problem in many elements of life.
I didn't go to Old Trafford because I consider myself to be part of the problem at Old Trafford, and turns out it's not just me.
It's not you. It's you.
It's them. Next up, Siobhan.
Yeah, a lot of me saying, as John's just said, so thanks, John. I'll show you my notes afterwards if it sounds like I'm just copying them.
Like countdown.
Show me working. I've got plenty of working, don't you worry. I also went into the season with fairly, I've written low, but it's not fair to say low. Modest managed expectations of what was going to happen. A fairly trudged through season the year before off the back of 2022, as you said, and I too hoped for more. I've written more stability, less injuries. Both of those things catastrophically go wrong, as in loads less stability in a way that none of us could have ever predicted. Maybe some of us would have predicted, but not this soon, and loads more injuries. And I too thought that the activity last summer was frustrating while it was happening, but you can reflect on it with some positivity. It didn't feel right to be involved in sagas to do with other teams who we consider inferior to us as an institution, as a club, as a legacy, but also just, on the field, it just didn't feel right to be involved in sagas with those just because they've got money to throw around. It felt really icky, for the technical terms, amongst us. And some of the activity probably came as a shock at the time, but what those exits did, those high-profile exits of, Henderson, Milner, Fabinho, was they took away a conversation that was rumbling all the season before, which I was glad that was gone, to be honest, of that, are these players good enough? Should we be carrying players of a certain age bracket in any way, shape or form? What's going on in midfield? All those conversations that were happening and that it seemed like we were just plugging away with. I actually cannot believe that Naby Keita only left last summer. That feels like 1,000 years ago to me. And yet we start the season uncertain as a fan base, I think, more than as a club. As you said, you weren't sure whether it was a good point or not. And that game didn't do any favours in terms of understanding where we were at for an awful long time. But I think you quite quickly find your groove to some amazing results, but some kinds of run-of-the-mill ones as well. But the ones I'll point out are, obviously, Villa at home is the most convincing one in that run. I think the most unconvincing but most statement one was Wolves away, of a terrible first half and a really great second half after a while. Obviously we saw Szoboszlai hit some levels there that he only managed to maintain for portions of the season, which was a shame. obviously the high of Newcastle and the way that game was won. I was also in the Red Lion. I missed you dancing on the tables, unfortunately, John. And same as other people have said, but you can't really talk about Spurs as a I don't really want to talk about it as a positive or a negative, because it was a gut punch of a result and you should never lose points in that manner. But you came away feeling so buoyed and buoyant and proud of what had happened that you kind of like, well, fuck them, we can take on the world. That was genuinely the sense. And those draws at Luton, at Luton and Brighton, were kind of like a bit of a blueprint for the more predictable, grey performances of the season. And I think that was probably the most disappointing thing for me. And I'm not going to be chronological for the whole of this. I'm just getting to a certain point. Can you guess what the certain point is? Christmas is such a mixed bag of like really good wins against like Burnley and Newcastle, I think it was. And then those 2 draws, which are, on reflection, I think probably the more significant games than, obviously Palace at home is a blow, but I think you've got to look further back to where it stopped being convincing, and that's where it was. What comes after that is so tied up in emotion and narrative and storyline that I actually find it hard to talk about it in a straight line. And I don't really want to try. Arsenal is a blot on a paper where you're beaten by a completely excellent side, so you're not too worried about. But I was actually really surprised because we were flawless against Chelsea, 5 days beforehand, 6 days beforehand. It was just such a Jekyll and Hyde night and day thing for me that that's where I went, oh shit. The League Cup final is a really special day for everyone who was part of it, everyone who was there, but also anyone who watched it. It's been spoken about across the season reviews and ad nauseum in general, but there's a series of wins that come after it that just feel so, regardless of results, it's clear that that's when it's becoming too much. Forest, Brighton, Sheffield, games that should be, as you said before, we're celebrating winning in dramatic fashion, when in actual fact it should just be another day, another dollar. And when the blow of Crystal Palace comes, right, I know it's a blow and it's when we all know. I was so relieved because you could breathe finally. And I know it's not a great place to be thinking, I'm so relieved that Liverpool have blown it. But I was so relieved because I was thinking, I can't take 2 more months of this. I can't emotionally commit to this for 2 more months. And, of all the disappointing results that followed, the derby is the only one that I think is like annoying because it's such a dereliction of duty for me, the way they play in that game. It's just such it's not even worth your words, but the relief that it's just over and you don't have to spend the next months of your life so tense. And when the manager says when he leaves, I'm running out of energy, I get that so much, and I'm just a spectator. I am not the manager of Liverpool Football Club, and I'm running out of energy. I'm running out of emotional bandwidth. This football club is taking up more emotion in my life than my immediate family. And it's not right. We have to find better ways to manage this alongside just living normal lives. Not so much the people who work in, nearly yourself and things, because it is, it's the dominant force in your life, but it doesn't have to be the dominant force in mine. Yet here I am letting it. What I've realised.
How's your bank holiday going?
I've got a bad back and I'm feeling existential, can you tell? I realised this year that it's a balancing act, this. I can't continue to attach such emotional importance to something that's out of my control and retain my sanity on a day-to-day basis. We spend Monday to Thursday thinking about it, Friday preparing for it, Saturday, Sunday living it, and then back into it on Monday. And it's a balancing act because it's great because we care, and I get all that. But just like Jurgen Klopp, I can't go to the well again and again with so many things out of my control. I'm a control freak in some facts, and in some I'm just not. And I've got to keep some sanity, which brings me to where we are now, which is quite a comfortable place. I think Arne Slot is going to get a bit of grace, hopefully, to find his feet, to get to know the players, to get to know the league, to, put together a cup run and finish in the top 4, and for that to be okay. And I'm looking forward to that because it feels like the pressure's off from day one. It takes, Jurgen Klopp was different. He was so enigmatic from day one that that relationship was there from straight away. I don't think that's going to happen again. I don't think we walk straight into this kind of mind-blowingly passionate, kinship with this person straight away like we did last time. And I'm really glad of it because it just needs some semblance of calm for a little while. And then if it builds in a year, great. That means he's done a great job and we can all do whatever we want and go mad. But I hope he gets the grace. I hope he gets the time. I hope that this time in 2 seasons I'm talking about how, oh God, I've become too emotionally involved again, because it means it's gone well. But I end the season, God, it's going to be a surprise to hear this, I end the season really happy with it, because I also had a ball to what I went to. I found the joy again. I found this has come as a surprise, where football's concerned, I'm like the eternal optimist. I always think it's going to be okay. And that's in relation to something I said earlier, because it isn't life or death. I always think it's going to be okay. You know, if we're not at the match and we're at home and I'm going, it's going to be all right, it's going to be, we'll score. And I remain that now, and I think it all will be okay. And I'm okay, and that's why I'm so okay with what happened, because it exceeds expectations from the beginning. The order in which things happen make it hard to... It means it takes a little bit of time to come to terms with that. But, you know, I'm looking forward to what's to come, because I feel like it will be much more level and balanced and calm for a little while at least.
Did you feel like it ramped up emotionally when he resigns?
Not for me personally.
But you were at this emotional pitch all the way through the season?
No. It does come then, yeah, because it becomes more urgent, because there's a deadline, and you know you haven't got 3 more seasons to get another Premier League out of him, or to get another Premier League and a Champions League out of him. You realise on that day you're never going to get another Champions League out of him, and I think these little moments happen periodically for the fortnight afterwards, where you have your it's like a breakup when you have your firsts without them, and you go, that was the first time I've done that without them, or the first time, have that whole thing. And I think I wasn't particularly like, we simply have to win the league. That's not how I felt, because I thought that everyone else has got a right to go for the league as well. It is not a divine right just because Jurgen Klopp's leaving to win the league. But I did feel like this will come a cropper. This will either be buoyant for a little while and will come a cropper, or it'll just come a cropper right now.
Yeah, I think that just on this, well, Stu's going to speak in a sec, but there was something in my head talking about those United games. The one thing that was always in my head, and it was in my head in real time because it was the first time it happened, was when Elliott went to him when he scored to make it 3-2. And I remember thinking, hang on, that's the first time I've seen one of them. Because everyone so far had just been, it's business as usual, we're all trying to... And it was the first time I thought, the emotion of this is there and it's present with them. The emotion's present with us, but it's present with them. Because one of the things I wonder, because Nunez doesn't do it, he goes to our end at the Forest game and it's the last minute winner, all of that. But that felt like the first time there'd been a bit of a crack in that facade of this isn't, and even the League Cup final, Virgil lets him go and lift the trophy with him, but that almost just felt it was as much part of all the young players and all that. So that was that.
There was another narrative that was bigger.
Exactly, that
day
swooped over it. In my head is what we never know is the way. Well, we might know when people write books or do interviews about it in 3 or 4 years' time, but what we don't know for now is how much that was there for them internally. Because I just sort of wonder whether or not they hit an emotional fever pitch maybe 6 weeks too early in a number of ways, in the same way that's what you're describing, that you went through as well because of him.
I don't think they're ever going to go, do you know what, we all just got actually totally overawed by
wrecked
it.
Our heads.
Because it's weakness, isn't it? They might do it when they're no longer professional footballers and they're after dinner speeches and things like that, but they're not going to give that away of themselves for the time being, and nor should they, because I'm much more comfortable with the narrative of no, we just weren't good enough for that period. I also think there's an element of, like Stu said before with fate, is that third and a cup is absolutely Liverpool's level this season. And maybe we were just outperforming our own expectations and our own levels for a really long time. And the narratives and the story just add layers to it and just add colour to it that actually, like you said before, it was in the stars. It was all written just without all that anyway.
Do you know, it was really interesting then watching you talk about the emotions of the season, and as you said before the manager made that announcement anyway, but it was, as you were talking about it, you were increasingly reliving it.
My neck is red.
You could see what you were going through, and I was observing that, going, she's really going through it there. And then when you started talking about the rest, I actually started to realise I'm stretching my neck here. And then as I was doing that, I realised how tight and locked my jaw was, and I'd been grinding my teeth. And my head was increasingly kettled, and I've thought a fair bit about this, actually, about the because we've got a manager who's an emotional manager, and he's strategically wanted to harness the emotions of what is an emotional club, an emotional fan base. And that all makes sense as to why he and we are all exhausted after this period of time. But I think there's more to it than that as well. I think there is I think there's an overarching narrative here of the fact that if it is constantly felt season on season like this could be now or never. Because if you think, I was thinking back to, listen, it can't have always been like this. I don't remember on the odd occasion we had a title race when I was younger that it felt as draining as this. There's the stories of the past, whether we won or lost, never felt, and when people talk about them from before my time as well, they don't talk about them with the level of emotion and destructive energy that I suppose that we're going through. Which let's be really honest, this is not normal. It is not okay. It is not a healthy way to live our lives. And I think the conclusion I've come to is the fact of that in no circumstance, even when there was great competition between title rivals, it always felt to some degree at the top that next year there'd still be that chance. And we're in a situation now where we've got state-owned clubs. We're not one of them. So that feels heavily stacked against us. And no matter what happens, you know they're going to keep coming and coming and coming. Yeah, their manager might go at some point, but they're going to be able to throw more money at it. There's an unstoppable force there. And it feels like that since we've had Jürgen, we've been able to overcome that to some degree, to be able to punch above our weight. And there's clearly at the back of our minds is, well, he's not going to go on forever. He's always been quite clear about that. He didn't want to go on forever.
Being an old manager, he said that. Yeah.
So you worry about the return to normalcy, the return to a life without the manager that we've got. I mean, here we are now. You know, that's we're having to deal with that reality now, but we've been scared of that reality for so long because we've put it at the feet of him that we've been able to compete against what is an unstoppable force which has no signs of ever being able to stop, because the powers that be that surround it don't seem to be arsed about letting nation states buy football clubs. And there also became a little bit of a, I couldn't help but have my mind wander to something that John referred to getting over 2022, and I had like a profound sense of sadness listening to that, because there's so many people that I know, so many Reds that I know that have spoken similarly. I've felt it myself for lots of different reasons. You know, for 2022, let's not forget we were this close to a quadruple and Everton going down, and I felt like we'd actually been able to touch the face of God and then have the drawbridge of heaven just slammed shut against us. And then you throw into the mix what happened at Paris, and we all walked away feeling football's about hope, and we all walked away no longer excited or believing what we'd all been hoping for because of the institutions that run the trophies, whether it be the European Cup or whether it be the Premier League. So I think there is this, you throw all the blanket over all of that, but one thing that both of you said that always pulls me back in, even those wins against those teams we should be beating, that Liverpool find a way to have us on our toes and exhaust us even more and find a way to beat Nottingham Forest in injury time. Those wins that seem to add a footnote onto the miracles of this football club, because it's just the way we seem to go about it against big teams and small teams. They're the things that keep us going, keep pulling us back into.
My last point was one that I just forgot to say, and we all should have. It was you saying about Klopp not wanting to be an old manager. We should have known that day we saw him carrying his grandchild in a papoose on his front, shouldn't we? Because he looked every inch the doting grandfather. And I remember saying to my fella jokingly, "Oh, he's just going to want to go and be someone's granddad now." And lo and behold, he just wants to go away and be someone's granddad. Sorry, that was so impassioned, what you've just said. And then I go, he's carrying the baby in a baby bjorn.
I just want to say one last thing. I know we've gone a bit long, so I'll be quick. When you said about the relief when it was over, and I was still fuming, and one of my mates said exactly what you said. He said, actually, I'm a bit relieved because I'm not sure I had the intensity in me. And I didn't feel it until about 3 days after he said it to me, and he's probably right. This is probably, like, for me, for every reason, I'd still swap places. I'd still want to be in there on the final day, but it was you could ease into it and enjoy it.
And
a little bit
Spurs
more.
at home was the loveliest day.
And you could sleep and all.
You could sleep. You could talk. There wasn't only one topic of conversation in the house.
Could you imagine? Could you imagine, like, if on the last day, Klopp's last day, if it was still on?
I said I would
It would
rather
have ruined
be
it, wouldn't it?
either we've got like a 80% plus chance of winning, i.e. we'd have to lose to not win the league,
89,
or it's over. They were my two options, and I didn't want a hint of in between.
There we are. Excellent stuff. Coming up now, as an insert, spoke to last week John Machin and Paul Machin about their book, The Man Who Stole the World Cup. That's on Kickstarter. Indeed, joined by John Machin and Paul Machin to talk about the book, the story come up with by John, which is The Man Who Stole the World Cup, supported by Paul on it. This is not available to be bought yet. We're going to talk about the Kickstarter in a minute or two, but first and foremost, John, when Paul called me to talk about this, he says you've had this story in your back pocket for about 20 years, 30 years, is that right?
I wrote it in the 80s.
In the 80s?
And it's mainly set in the 80s, so it's authentic, if nothing else.
To that time,
so
that
anyone
moment.
who wasn't alive then will get a surprise at how awful it was. No, but I wrote it in the 80s. I used to write a lot, but I never finished much.
Yeah.
And then there was a competition, and I actually think it might have been a Richard and Judy competition for a children's book. So I wrote it really quickly because I had the idea for this story in my head for ages. I wrote it really quickly, sent it off, didn't do any good in the competition. But I thought, what you do with a book then, you send off a chapter and a summary to a publisher and see what happens. I did that, and then I got news that my brother-in-law had died in a climbing accident, and almost like the week after, the book came back through the post saying, no, we're not interested in the book. So I threw it in a drawer and left it in the drawer and basically forgot about it. I dragged it out when Paul was bored sometime when he was about 10. Said, shut up and read that. And then again forgot all about it until Paul resurrected it recently and decided he wanted to put some effort into having it published.
So when 10-year-old Paul gets this story that's written by his dad and thinks, because I'm 2/3 of the way through, I haven't read it all, but I've really enjoyed it. It absolutely rattles along, and I can exactly imagine how 10-year-old Paul really enjoyed it. It's a really nice premise, the idea of using it is a mad thing that we forget the theft of the World Cup. I've actually looked it up in the context. It happens in March. It's not after England have won it. It happens in March, and that wasn't right in my head, and I checked that out. It's a really, I can see exactly why a 10-year-old Paul would love this.
No, 100%. It was from a couple of perspectives. First and foremost, it being two kids from Liverpool, so you've automatically got that sort of connection. I mean, the boys are Evertonian, so there was obviously a little bit of disparity there, but it was that, so obviously, there's young kids in this, you can relate to that, but also the Liverpool connection, and again, there's comic book reference and stuff. It's just ultimately, my dad and I, and are both a bit geeky as well, so we've always kind of been into all this kind of stuff. So it's got time travel elements, it's got local kids, it's got loads of comic book references. It mentions football players like Kenny Dalglish, who of course I was raised to as this is the greatest footballer ever to play for Liverpool Football Club. So it did, and it's one of them. It's amazing how much stuff like that sears into your brain. The actual story itself, but actually for me, just the idea that like someone, like a member of my family, could create something, take something out of the brain and put it down on paper was always fascinating to me.
So it sits in the drawer apart from when it comes out for Paul. Did you ever think you'd want to resurrect it properly? Did it ever occur to you, or was it just you and Paul sat around talking about it?
I did. I always thought what I need to do here is maybe it's a very dialogue heavy book. Certainly in its original form it's dialogue heavy, and I always thought I should get it out and put a bit of filler around it and stuff like that, and that's basically what Paul's done when he's sort of resurrected it. He's tightened it up a bit and put a bit more meat on those dialogue.
It was the thing. You wrote it in the 80s, so it wouldn't have occurred to be like this is how they're dressed, because that's just you write someone's jeans. You don't think about what your jeans look like. You just they're your jeans. But actually, for me, it's like, well, the jeans in the 80s looked like this. So I thought it was important to kind of to have it be a nostalgia piece, because obviously we've just gone through, you know, the sort of Stranger Things era of television and what have you, where people are really leaning into that. I was like, well, that's great. The tracky tops and the trainers and all that kind of stuff are important. So it all existed in my head, and I guess yours at the time. But I wanted to try and put a bit more around that, like.
Yeah, I mean, one of the other things I wanted to do was write about football matches, find a way, because you never read books that told, you know, you didn't read about football matches in fiction. You only ever read, you know, if you pick up the paper, you know. So I wanted to write about some of the football matches I've been to, and there are references to football matches way back in the 19th century or whatever.
And you got the Stanley Matthews final, you got Dixie Dean.
Someone, when I told them about the book, said to me, "Are you that old?" But no, I'm not that old. But there is the Inter Milan game is in there, which I went to, and which I sort of, for me, it was great getting it down. I never thought I'd forget it, but as I'm getting older, I realised that, you know, my memory of it is fading slightly. So I'm quite pleased that I wrote down what my memories were.
You're right to say there isn't a lot of fiction, even up until maybe even around the time of Fever Pitch, which isn't fiction, but which is literature about football. There actually isn't that much sort of fiction written about football prior to sort of 1992. There's I can't remember the name of the team, but the non-league team that could win the FA Cup. There's a couple of Hunter Davies books that call on football, but there really wasn't that much, was there, around that time?
No, none at all, really. You'd have, I mean, obviously I was big into comics in them days, but you know, there was Roy of the Rovers, and as a kid I used to read things like Hotshot Hawkins and all these kind of guys in the Hotspur and stuff like that, which were, you know, guys who would take a corner and run in and head it in themselves, that kind of stuff, you know. But, you know, not proper football, you know, top class football. It was very rarely mentioned in books.
It's part of probably why when you get it out and read it to you, Paul, it stays with you, because, as I say, even, you know, you think about that era, computer games were just beginning to sort of be popularised and all that sort of stuff. There just wasn't, outside of even things like Shoot, which dealt with proper football, if you see what I mean, there just wasn't that much popular stuff around football at all, in the same way that there's so much now.
No, 100%. And you know, I mentioned Roy of the Rovers. I was a huge Roy of the Rovers fan in the 90s and beyond. I've got the last ever issue of the original run in the Loft and Ours, because like, you know, it became a generational thing where actually his son took over, and that was my generation. So yeah, we had definitely more of it, and football just became cooler in the 90s, didn't it? You know what I mean? It was very Britpop, you know, and that kind of thing, and Soccer AM and stuff. So actually, the idea of having a pop culture sort of book around it, yeah, it really did. But I spent like the late 90s. I remember doing GCSEs and getting our first family computer and getting a photo editing software and trying to make a cover for this myself of like the famous picture of the England team with the World Cup, but it's gone out of, you know, it's been stolen from there.
Like a Back to the Future sort of, you know,
honestly, you know, and so that was a big formative time for me. Like,
so the reason why you've come in is to talk about not just the book, but also how people can support it at this point in time.
Yeah.
And the wider picture of it. It's something that you noticed when you put it out on social. You're really pleased and proud to be able to talk about this and get this out, Paul.
Yeah, 100%, because it's two stories really. You know, the book itself is, I think, worthy of being published. I you know, it's not hyperbole of me to be able to say I adore it, and I always have adored it, and I just wanted to see it out in the world. But actually, beyond that, there is, you know, its creation. This is literally sat in my loft. There are two original manuscripts, and one was in yours and one was in mine. And when I've been trying to type this up since I was 15, 16, thinking I'll just type it up and we can do something with it once it's digital, because it was typewriter written, you know, like Tipex marks and the works. It was a finite airlocked thing. And so yeah, you know, make it be a thing, but you know, again, it's not comfortable for me, Dad, to kind of talk about this kind of stuff. But you know, my mum was diagnosed with dementia 18 months ago, and my wife has helped in a number of very practical ways. But me being me, was like, well, okay, well, what can I do? Well, there's this book. You know, I've published books myself. I know that and books are lifelong ambitions, but also they're a way to generate funds. They're a way to change lives, you know, to have creative pursuits. So that was the final sort of almost motivation. You know, almost those things where you go, it might be too late, but
No, I laughed there because I like the idea of, there's practical ways to help, but your brain goes to, as mine would, your brain goes to what's the biggest idea we can think of,
100%,
and that's what you wanted, and that's what this is, and that's why it means so much to the whole family, isn't it? It's part of, you've come here with your dad and made up you have, because it means so much to the whole family to see this be as successful as it can be.
Yeah, absolutely. My sister's got like a master's in English and literature and writing and all that kind of stuff. So I've really paid attention to her educational career, as you can tell. But to the point,
what a master's it was, Paul.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, what a great time at Bile. But to the point, she's the very she can look through a text and pick out mistakes and what have you. I won't tell her that she missed the one that you pointed out earlier. But
she wouldn't know though.
She wouldn't know the difference in the footy teams.
Southampton.
but it's the skill set point of I said we were doing this without, my dad didn't know when we were originally starting this sort of project, and I said to her, look, I've got this to a finished state, will you read it through? And she did. So yeah, it's been a real sort of family endeavour. But you're right, it sounds mad to think whereas in reality what you probably needed was someone to I don't know, I'll do the garden a bit more, but that's...
No, what people need support for the right things. That's what they need, and that's what this is. So how can people support you and support at this time?
Yeah, so it's on Kickstarter, and just one of the things I'm kind of keen to stress, really, we put it out, we've set a target of £7,600, which was to basically cover the printing of the initial first run of books and what it would cost to post it out to all the people who supported it. We smashed through that in about 5 or 6 hours, which was absolutely outrageous, beyond expectations. So now we're very much in this stage where the cause of it exists, and people still come up to us and talk about that, which is a thing. But actually, it's a book now. It's going to be a proper book. Yeah. So actually, I just want people to go to. So it's up on Kickstarter. The idea was we had until, I think it was the 7th of July. You had 60 days with the Kickstarter to run it and reach your goals. But actually, now we've reached the goals. It's effectively a pre-order website. So people go to Kickstarter, search for The Man Who Stole the World Cup. They can have just a copy of the book. It'll be a hardback version. It's got unique artwork to the first edition that'll only be on this first edition as well, which I've just seen this week, which I haven't revealed yet, which is spectacular, from Johnny Weisberg, who's done a stellar job.
Johnny's brilliant.
He is. He's unbelievable. And people can pre-order and get a signed copy. They can do whatever with it, really. And
you've done other books, but this is the first one that's also a family affair. You must be pretty moved by it.
I was really embarrassed to begin with. I'll be honest, but...
What about this fella?
No.
He's your dad.
I know. Yeah.
Go on. Why were you embarrassed?
Just the whole thing, I've always been a very private, quiet, sit in the corner, don't say a lot kind of guy. Unless I'm talking about something I'm really interested in or have some knowledge in. So for suddenly someone to be talking about my private life and on YouTube and all that kind of stuff was quite difficult. And know that people were looking at Kickstarter and reading, all this stuff. And I found that a little difficult. But I realised that it was important if the book was to be published. And I mean, this guy is probably the best PR guy in the world because he never stops talking.
I definitely get that from my mum.
All right then. So that's what you needed, is the Kickstarter. You will find it. It's now just a pre-order website, but it's also about basically a little bit of a family odyssey to create something good and put it out into the world. And if you can't say anything better than that, then it's something really rather special. And as I say, I'm 2/3 of the way through, and it's a hell of a romp. I've very much enjoyed it. So thank you very much indeed to John and Paul for taking the time and coming in. Do check it out. It'll be absolutely perfect for the 12-year-old maniac in your life, or the one that constantly lives within you, which is also my point of view. We'll get back over.
Great stuff from both of them there, from John and Paul. I am formally 70% into writing the words for my book, which if you haven't ordered yet, it's called Transformer. It's about Jurgen Klopp. It's out in September. Buy it now. We want it to go to #1. I'm not brooking any fucking argument. Buy the book. Buy the book right now. I need you to buy the book. Do buy the book, and I might even finish the words of it this week. Okay, last season review. It's a smooth sales pitch, and it's one that is going to continue all the way through in that tone as well, by the way. So do buy the book. Last of our season reviews there's one more to come out if you're a subscriber, but last for the day, Steve Graves.
So I feel like we've talked a lot about people, more than maybe in a usual season review, about like personal circumstances and stuff happening to people, from parents being kidnapped to becoming grandfathers to to all of the ways, and we'll start with the Klopp thing, and I think we talk about players collectively so much. How did they react? How are they going to respond to this? in loads of in 20, 25 individual ways, and I think that's kind of unpicked itself over the season, and I feel like you got to a point where some players had been really galvanised, and some players for understandable reasons seemed a bit confused, and some players were somewhere in between, and I think it didn't even map across onto, this player's been here forever, so he's very secure in his position, he knows he's here next season, to this player's been here for a season and the manager just might not fancy him, and he's looking at, we're all doing the conversation about, at the time, Amorim, he plays three at the back and he doesn't play this type of player and he doesn't play this type of player, and if you're that type of player, that's got to be a bit of a distracting thing for you. So yeah, the whole, I think this season more than most has been for me one where it's felt very personal, not least because there was a big change in my life early in the season in becoming a father, and so I had to check what happened on the 29th of October, which is that Liverpool beat Nottingham Forest 3-0, because my only experience of that game, and I don't even know if I've seen the highlights, was just a fella in the next bed on maternity bay going, "The Red Shies have won again."
That's the best way.
Which is all I needed, to be honest. And I would recommend that there's different ways. You can go to the game, you can follow it on the radio, you can look on CFAX or whatever the equivalent is these days, or you can just have an Evertonian say the Red Shies have won again. And all of them are really quite good ways to experience the game. And this season I have had all of those. I have had the gamut really of different ways to watch Liverpool, by and large for the last 11, 12 years. If Liverpool have been at Anfield, I've been at Anfield, or I've been, unavoidably detained. This sounds like I've been arrested, like I'm Nicki Minaj or something, doesn't it? But I've just not been able to be there. So this season, for obvious reasons, I had to spend quite a lot more time watching us on telly at home when we were at home. But I managed to catch some of the best away experiences of my life, really. Newcastle, I think, was a high that I couldn't even begin to replicate it. I think the whole season after that really felt a little bit of a come down from how incredible that was. If you look on paper, that just makes no sense. You can forget, and I think through the middle of the season, and it became clearer towards the end of the season, that Newcastle were a top four side, were a side that we were by many expected to finish behind, or if we were going to finish anywhere, we were going to have to muscle them out of the way, and that was true of lots of them. So coming into the season, I'm an optimist. I don't remember a season apart from maybe one when I didn't think Liverpool were about to win the league, and I'd include 14, 15, I'd include 09, 10 in that. I'd include 04, 05. When you just think, you could see it. Something's changed, something's happened, something will come along that will mean this can happen. And I really don't understand people who don't at least allow themselves a little bit of that, or who are censorious about that, as if somehow you're going to ruin it by at least enjoying it before it happens. I'm kind of happy, and that was my outlook at the start of the season. When the McAllister and Szoboszlai deals got done quickly, and then you saw in those early pre-season games McAllister making the difference that he made. I think it gets eclipsed a little bit at the start of the season, when you actually see games, and Szoboszlai looks like the one who's lifting us, but really it's McAllister who is the signing of the season. He's the signing of most seasons, and I'm going to come on to all of the reasons for optimism, which again I think has been our overall motif has been that we're relatively optimistic about what's to come, which is all you can ever ask. He's one of the massivest ones for me. Like, we talk about the chaos around the transfer stuff. Really, Liverpool got their business done with a minimum of chaos. It's the business they didn't do that was chaotic. They saw a fellow with a release clause who's a World Cup winner who anyone would want, and they got him. And that was pretty much the way they went about their business. I mean, the Jörg Schmadtke era is going to be an odd diversion along the road when it comes to maybe a footnote in your book now, which I'm assuming people should buy. So yeah, going into it, I think for me it feels like the season falls into four stages. One is that early season optimism, and Szoboszlai really sort of embodies that for me, and probably his goal against Villa embodies it all. It's like the sort of thing we weren't doing for a long time. Yeah. The sort of thing people around me were going, oh, no one can shoot in this team, no one can score from distance, and I was going, that doesn't really matter. And then you see it and you go, nah, I quite like it when it happens, to be honest. And then Leicester City goal that he scores, McAllister against Fulham, it's like Liverpool began to embrace the idea that you could score from range and you could throw something else in there, and then obviously Endo and McAllister's Trent's goal against Fulham, which just complete. I mean that was the maddest 4 goals I think you'll ever see a team score. And Liverpool really go up to that period when I stopped watching them with a load of optimism, and then I come out the other side with Luton away. Really is the one I've got very little. I know very little about what happened at Bournemouth in the League Cup, other than that Núñez scores one from distance, and then then Luton away, and that to me just felt like the start of something that was a little bit deflating. You just felt like you'd seen it before a million times, but what you hadn't seen before was Liverpool get the point. You feel like, at least, and you probably have seen it, but you felt like this is a game we're just not going to score here. This is just not going to happen. This is Bournemouth away last season. This is the kind of game where Liverpool, we could get a penalty, they could have 2 cents off. It doesn't matter. This is not going to happen for us. And the fact that it does, and the fact that it does in those sort of dramatic circumstances, is just all a bit mad. And then you go into that period, and January is probably the sort of the period when Liverpool they're absolutely flying, and I'm also getting out a bit more and able to go to matches and go into aways and enjoying things again. And then Arsenal comes along, and I really wish I hadn't, and I wish I hadn't been in London for that one. And I think the season as a whole is all of these little peaks and troughs, and there's never quite a consistent. For me, I think Newcastle at home is the best we've played, and we still concede 2, and we still look a little bit ropey. We talked about Tottenham, we loved that, and we absolutely exerted our superiority. We still conceded 2 goals. You just felt like there's a lot wrong with this Liverpool team, but there's a lot right with it. And for most of the season, I was thinking all of the things that are right are coming through, and then I had a really, really low spell around Palace and Everton when I went, this new manager's inheritance is going to be a really tough one, because he's inheriting way more questions than answers. Suddenly you're not talking about Darwin Núñez's potential, you're talking about the potential for it to be a big problem, a big issue, a big drama and a narrative. You're talking about what do you do with Salah. You're even thinking about, there was talk around Alisson, there was talk around Van Dijk and his uncertainty about whether he would stay. And then you're looking at, because I'm always really looking at next season, because I'm always thinking, especially once a season like this one has gone, in terms of winning one of the 2 things that I care about, which was never on the cards in one case this season anyway, but the other one that was, once it was gone, you're thinking, what is the new manager coming into? And now I feel much more upbeat. Now I feel like he's coming into Harvey Elliott. He's coming into Jarrell Quansah, frankly. I think is as impressive a centre back of his age that I've seen come through for a very, very long time, at least without the outlay of £80 million or something. I think he's coming through to a sort of sense of purpose, and I really enjoyed Alisson's interview at the end of the game with his little boy, where he was talking about it's us now, we're leaders, and all of the things that just made me think, well, A, you're not going anywhere, and B, you're brilliant, and you are the kind of thing that gives me so much faith in this team. So when you look on paper, this has been a real par performance, probably slightly above par in the league. I think if you look at the start of the season, you look at the fact that they had to get past Manchester United, they had to get past Newcastle, they had to see off a resurgent Spurs who everyone got really excited about their manager, they had to see off Chelsea, who spent loads of money on some good players. It wasn't like you went, Chelsea have wasted loads of money there. You just went, they're players that people have talked about we would quite like to have, not least the ones that we definitely showed that we really wanted to have. So Liverpool had to do a lot to get to third, and they had to do a lot to win a trophy, and to get into quarterfinals of the other 2 competitions. The nature in which those 2 competitions, I think particularly the Europa League, evaded us is really frustrating. I think that Atalanta performance encapsulated a little bit of a lack of pessimism, I suppose, a lack of negativity at times that Liverpool couldn't accept being 1-0 down in it. Kelleher should probably do better for the first goal, and we're 1-0 down, and we could maybe go there and be 1-0 down and be okay with that. They just become more and more brainless as the game goes on and step on more and more rakes, and you see that in the Old Trafford games as well. We are the architects of our own downfall. The only way Manchester United are likely to come back into the game is through a couple of bits of brilliance from their players, some of whom can be brilliant at times, and also Liverpool walking in, being the architects of their own downfall, and that happens. So both of those things happen. So we've talked about all of the mad things, all of the chaos, and it actually comes out as on paper. When you look at the record books in 15 years' time, people will be like, well, that didn't seem like a remarkable season, but it was remarkable. There was so many remarkable things, and there's so many remarkable things I think for the new manager to pick up on, to work with, to add his own players to add his own stamp to. But yeah, I feel really optimistic now. I can't wait. I mean, unlike maybe some people, I can't wait to see us play pre-season games. I can't wait to see us play real games under the new manager. I think that's the least we owe him, the least we owe any manager coming in. Can't wait for the press conference, frankly. I can't wait to hear what he has to say about, I've been impressed by things he said, but I can't wait to hear what he has to say about Liverpool. I remember the first Rodgers one when I went from, wow, we've got a fella in, let's just see how it works, maybe we'll sack him, to going, he's brilliant, isn't he? I can't wait. Can't wait. And that's who you always want to be, isn't it? I can't imagine wanting to be, unless someone is demonstrably terrible or Roy Hodgson. I don't really want to start from a point of view of this is not going to work, because I think there's a million and one reasons to think that it might.
Okay, just quick before we sum up. McAllister, you touched on it and then sort of pulled back. Full on sign of the season, whole league sign of the season, signing for 10 years. That sort of signing. I mean,
I'm up there. Yeah, I think the intelligence, the quality. What I didn't know really was that he's the goal threat. Different types of goals he scores, not least the sort of last proper goal really under. The second one is a bit mad, isn't it? But the execution of the header, that was like Jota-esque, and I think what he's really good at, and I think when you see very good footballers, and Raheem Sterling could do this at times, when they played in different positions, they were almost like they were doing impressions of someone who was really good at playing in that position. So I genuinely think if you played him number 9, he'd look a bit like Jota. If you played him a little bit wide, so that's why I have a bit more confidence when you think, you look at a manager coming in and you think he doesn't play many players who maybe plays in his position. Well, I think that could change a little bit. But B, he just seems supremely adaptable, a great player around the camp, does all of his sort of media duties really. None of that matters that much, but there is a sense that he's a grown up, and I think that radiates through that whole midfield when he's there. And I think we spent a lot of time going, he can't really play at number 6. I think there's specific games when he really can, and there's some games when he really can't, as in Goodison away. And I just genuinely think they must have thought Calvert-Lewin wasn't going to play, because that's the only reason I can think really that we didn't go with Endo in that game. But yeah, McAllister is like a dream signing, and the more of them you can get, the better. And also he stays fit, which is great.
By all accounts, a top lad as well.
He has his laugh.
No,
it's so funny. There's like an extended reel of different clips where he's laughing. It's so fun. I'm not going to do an impression.
Sign me up.
I'm going to send you. It's so good. It's so good.
Well, when the Golden Samba, he got the Golden Samba this year, and when the kids were on the pitch doing the presentation, he gave the young lad who gave him the trophy, gave him his boots, and I just thought, what a guy! One of us. Honestly, really, really cool. Really, really cool.
You'll love it. The laugh will only add to that. I'm telling you now. I've been quite reassured actually by listening to players' comments post end of season, or particularly post Klopp's kind of.
Salah's
I keep saying his hands on his noticing. I kept saying, his hands. People would like talk about. I was like, his hands on his noticing, as if he works in HR. But yeah, Salah's, without going all out on, I'm staying, because they can never say that at this point in the season, at this point of the summer, with complete surety. But hearing Van Dijk, be so upset, hearing that he was so trite about what he'd said accidentally, kind of thing, in the immediate aftermath, and correct it straight away on that podcast. Seeing Salah's Instagram post where you're like, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I didn't see the Alisson one, but obviously Trent this weekend gave a tiny interview at the Formula One where he said
Trent's walking around Monaco in white
dungarees.
bib embrace him.
I said,
it might not be in his hands anymore, to be honest with you.
I said, when you've got the Formula 1 at 4 and potty training at 6, you just look like a giant baby.
The thing that
Kevin Rowland.
The thing that occurs, and it hasn't occurred to me now until now really, because the thing that I had in my head about the Klopp thing is, why isn't he giving himself another year of the Champions League? Why, whatever the pressing thing is, and it's a combination of factors, I'm sure. Would you not think the Champions League one more year? But is it almost like the greatest gift to us, really, that he's given the Champions League so that you've got all of these players, by and large, have a great incentive to stay? That there is like if he is a fan and he's like, I want to watch these in the Champions League next year, and he's seen what happened. We were in it the year in which we finished 5th and drop out of it. He doesn't want another season like that. None of us wanted a season. I don't think any of us, if we can all put ourselves in our position, do you want a season where Jurgen Klopp has finished 5th and then finished 3rd, having seen a title race? I'm trying to find a non-alarmist way of saying it. Dissipate, yeah. But I'm sure the people who would be saying it would be saying fall apart, or they'd be saying words worse than that. Then you're into September, October, and it's not going great. And none of us want to be there, I don't think, and not least him. And where we all want to be is with something that feels fresh and feels new, and that's what he's given us. But also without the idea that you're throwing everything out. You have to change everything because we haven't finished back in the Champions League again. We haven't shown we're real contenders again. Those players can all tell themselves that this is, when you look at if you're motivated by winning trophies and by winning the biggest trophy, which I think most of them are, what's your best chance of doing it? Is it at Liverpool or is it somewhere else? And I think for most of them it's at Liverpool, and that's a great gift from him.
There we are. Been absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much to John, to Stu, to Siobhan, and to Steve. What a set of season reviews.